Heyo, EC here, and today I'm just going to come out right and say it. The Nintendo Switch is Nintendo's laziest console. Now, why do I say this? Largely start with the obvious fact that, yes, the innovations they made with the Switch Joy-Cons is obviously a huge deal, and it's nice they obviously had the stuff like the HDR camera, the motion controls, all this sort of stuff. It was great to have them to make games, playable and give sort of the vibe of the old Wii era. However, we also need to factor in the problem of Nintendo's first-party lineup for this generation. Now, I know what people are going to say, you're going to talk about the Wii U games. You're going to talk about the fact a majority of the early releases on the Nintendo Switch were Wii U games. And that is true. A lot of Wii U games came to the Nintendo Switch, and it is largely these were largely games that were beloved and obviously fan favourites, or probably for Nintendo, cost quite a bit to make. And obviously Nintendo decided they were going to re-release these games on the Switch, because obviously I get they had to make their budgets back. I get these were expensive games to make, and I understand that. But then you also got to look at the other stuff they did. So something I think is a little bit weird is the remasters and the remakes they did for Switch. Luigi's Mansion 2? Really? Luigi's Mansion 2? You remade that. You remade a 3DS game for the Switch. Now, I'm not trying to... Hey, Luigi's Mansion, my boy Luigi, he's doing good. He's doing good work. I'm pretty sure we're talking about the guy who did the healthcare CEO. Not the other guy, but Luigi, he's doing all right. He's doing all right. But you remastered Luigi's Mansion 2. And you didn't remaster the first one. There's already remastered the first one for the 3DS, which was put out around the time. Like, that was weird to me. Like, you put out a 3DS remaster of Luigi's Mansion 1, and then obviously you put Luigi's Mansion 2 as a remaster on Switch, like, years later. Okay. It's not a bad game, but it's questionable. You didn't really do much to really change it. I know you had to redesign the screens and stuff, but let's be real, it's not really a big upgrade, is it? And then you also got to look at the other games. Obviously, you got all the Wii U ports, obviously. You got the Wii U sequels, so like they did sequels to like Mario Maker and Splatoon, obviously. But then you also got games like Metroid Prime Remastered, which was just kind of interesting. Like, you remastered the GameCube game, rebuilt from the ground up. Okay, cool. But you remastered the GameCube game, whilst Metroid Prime 4 has been in development now. You had to restart development on that. But also, just interestingly enough, they did that, and then they released a GameCube app a few years later for Switch 2, which begs the question why you were remastering GameCube games. Because they also remastered, Paper Mario Advance on your door. Well, remastered, they gave it a lick of paint and just put it out. Not really much has changed. Then you also look at some other games. Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. Really? Like, were you serious with this? Because they started remastering certain Wii games. And all they really did with the Wii games was basically add like controller support, so you didn't have to use motion controls to play the whole game. Which, okay, but then you gave them a little bit of graphical upgrade, made them be playable in HD. I mean, are we justifying the $10 price increase yet? I mean, are we really justifying the $10 price increase for like Skyward Sword HD and Donkey Kong Country Returns HD and Paper Mario Advance on your door? I think it was like, I can't remember how expensive games were when the GameCube came out, because obviously I was -2 when the GameCube released, so I was -2, so I have no idea how much games cost for the GameCube when they first came out. But I know GameCube games are very expensive nowadays, because obviously the console didn't sell that great. But it's just, to me, as well, like the Super Nintendo remaster of Super Mario RPG. Okay, I'm not hating on that. Let's be real, I'm not gonna hate on that, because I do kind of get it. The game came out in the Super Nintendo, so the remaster is basically practically a whole new game. But then the remasters and the remakes and all this sort of stuff that they keep doing for the Switch, which is kind of questionable, because they would take all the Wii U games, port them over, add an extra few levels, like extra hours of content or something, and then that was it. They were done. Cool. Then they would do the remasters, and a lot of the remasters, they just kind of updated the graphics, updated the controls, and that was it. Like, they didn't really give you much of a reason, like any hidden features or anything really that the original game didn't have, besides a bit nicer graphics and obviously a bit of a controller upgrade. And then it just kind of feels like Nintendo didn't really try with the Switch generation. They kind of had the hits. They knew the games from the Wii U that sold well on the Wii U were going to sell on the Switch, because obviously there wasn't as much confusion with the Switch of what the Switch was. So they just took a lot of the Wii U games, ported over. And that's not saying they didn't have some great games. They had some great games on the Switch itself. Super Mario Odyssey, for example, it's a great game. You know, Tears of the Kingdom, great game, although that came out near the end of the Switch lifespan. Yeah, it's kind of insane because there were great games from Nintendo's first-party lineup, but a lot of them were, like, updated versions of games that already came out. And it kind of, like, I'm kind of worried that, like, we're going to start seeing the Xboxification of Nintendo, which is basically where they just keep re-releasing the same thing. And let's be real. We don't want that. We do not need Nintendo going down the path of Xbox. Because, realistically, did anyone buy an Xbox after the 360? Like, let's be real. But, yeah, I kind of hope that, like, with Switch 2, Nintendo, I say hope, they're already off to a bad start. They're already doing these sort of, like, upgrade packs for, like, half the catalogue of Switch 1 games. So, I'm not really a fan of that, to be honest. Not really a fan of them keep doing these upgrade packs for, like, Switch games. But, you know, there's not really much we can do about it, is it? Unless, you know, you boycott and whatever. But, I'll be honest, the Switch was just the laziest console generation because they kept remaking and remastering something else. That's not saying, it's not me saying, like, oh, you know, don't make these games available on modern systems. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying, like, realistically, like, the amount of original games that were actually new is quite low. And also the fact that this was their most profitable, like, console generation ever. Compared to other console generations, they made more money in the Switch generation than they did in any other generation. And it's kind of insane that they did it whilst making less new games. You know, the amount of new games we were getting for this generation was a lot less. And they somehow made more money, which to me is just insane. It is a business practice that needs to be studied. Because let's be fair, like, you're telling me EA and, like, Activision, they ain't going to love that idea? That they can just make less games and make more money? Please, Nintendo, don't be telling these companies this, because we don't need to know. We do not need 16 DLCs to FIFA. Sorry, EA Sports Etsy. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think about this. Do you think the Switch 1 generation was the worst Nintendo generation? And do you think the Switch 2 generation is going to be worse? Because I think the Switch 1 generation was just lazy because they just kept re-releasing stuff and, like, remaking and remastering stuff. And it kind of feels like they lost a bit of their edge. I kind of hope that in Switch 2 generation they do more original games. Although, considering they've done quite a few upgrade packs already, I'm not exactly hyped for that. Anyway, let me know what you think, guys. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe, like all that stuff. And I've been EC and I'm signing out. Peace.